The tribulations of human activity-induced greenhouse gas emissions. A focus and comparison of greenhouse gas emissions in the United States and the New England area by economic sector.
Gases exist all around us and take up the volume of whatever space they are in. Gases are responsible for keeping us alive, from the mix of oxygen and nitrogen we breathe to the carbon dioxide we exhale as a product of respiration.
Gases like methane and carbon dioxide are naturally found in the environment. It can be noted that since the Industrial Revolution, the atmospheric carbon dioxide concentration has increased by over 120 parts per million due to human interference. But what exactly happens when human activities drastically increase the amount of these gases present in our atmosphere? To answer this question, let's take a look at something called the greenhouse effect. As sunlight arrives at the Earth, 31% of this light is reflected by clouds, snow, ice, and sand. Sunlight that is not reflected is absorbed by the surface, heating it. The heated surface emits infrared radiation. Infrared radiation is absorbed by greenhouse gases, which traps energy in our atmosphere. So, with more greenhouse gases like carbon dioxide and methane being emitted, the Earth warms up more and more.
An increase in the number of greenhouse gas emissions due to human activities have already done a number on our planet. For example, the increased heating of our planet has caused a large amount of land ice to melt. Effects of this include a subsequent rise in global sea level and loss of Arctic animals.
So what human activities emit the most greenhouse gases?
First, let's talk about transportation. Transportation is a consistent player in greenhouse gas emissions globally. Whether for private travel or industry shipping, transportation is needed everywhere, and New England is no exception. As of 2013, transportation accounted for 43% of New England's emissions, making it our highest emissions contributor. To account for this, many states choose to implement municipal transportation regulations. Massachusetts in particular has taken the lead in emissions reductions, utilizing excise tax breaks to incentivize the purchase of efficient vehicles and creating a program to switch spending over from highway spending to public transportation. Next, we have electricity production and consumption. In addition to our transportation emissions, another leading cause in global emissions is electricity. Electricity is used all over for many purposes, the biggest contributors of which include lighting, computers, heating, and heating inefficiencies. Many emissions studies suggest that simple improvements in the home, such as maintaining up-to-date windows that seal in heat, can reduce our carbon emissions in a meaningful way.
Industries also play a large role in emitting greenhouse gases. Industries produce greenhouse gases during the production and transport of goods. However, simply maintaining industrial facilities results in unnecessary and excess emissions. New England is filled with industries such as manufacturing, pharmaceutical, and tech companies. Typically, employees are not worried about wasting energy and they want to keep comfortable. For example, many companies have TVs and other displays that are running 24/7 along with thermostats that are always set to comfortable settings. One simple solution could be setting the thermostat 2 degrees lower in the winter and higher in the summer. This could save about 2,000 pounds worth of carbon dioxide emissions each year. Now let's talk about agriculture. Cows are a main feature of farms. One cow can release anywhere between 70 to 120 kilograms of methane per year. What is important to note about methane release is that the effect of methane is 23 to 30 times higher than the effect of carbon dioxide. That means if one cow releases at most 100 kilograms of methane per year, that's about the same as 2,300 kilograms of carbon dioxide being emitted per year into the atmosphere. With the same amount of greenhouse gas emissions, you could drive about 7,900 miles per year. Or in other words, that means burning about 1,000 liters of petrol. As the demand for meats continues to increase, the need to raise livestock continues to increase. Now that's only talking about one cow. There are about 1.5 billion cows in the world, and they emit somewhere near 2 billion metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalents per year. The clearing of forests to make room for grazing and farming leads to an extra 2.7 billion metric tons of carbon dioxide emissions per year. In New England, more than 950,000 acres of forest has been lost since 1985 due to residential construction and farming, an estimated 5% of New England's total forested area. Throughout the world, rice paddies produce about 50 to 100 million metric tons of methane a year. For the most part, rice is grown in the southern United States, but some farmers are trying to experiment with growing more rice in New England.
Massachusetts has made a great deal of progress in reducing greenhouse gas emissions by setting the goal of 80% emissions reductions of 1990 levels by 2050. However, it is clear which economic sectors are going to have to be restructured to reach our long-term goals, and we have to begin now. Residential heat and electricity use make up nearly 40% of our total greenhouse gas emissions. Transportation, our biggest emissions contributor, produces a whopping 39.4% of emissions in Massachusetts. The IPCC commented that land use and transportation planning have shown to be effective emissions reducers, especially when they prioritize alternative and public transportation.
The question that now remains is, how can we reduce the amount of greenhouse gas emissions without compromising the industrial economy and our use of electricity, transportation, and agriculture? For now, we can start by adopting some environment-friendly practices. We can plan on reducing our driving and taking public transportation whenever possible.
The wasting of household electricity is a big problem. That's why it's important to shut off the lights when they're not in use.
Besides going vegetarian to reduce the demands for the meat industry, we can try and enforce rules in which deforestation for farming must be accompanied by efforts to reforest other areas.
Eventually, when renewable energy is more mainstream, factories can avoid using fossil fuels.